fight to stop Obamacare. Ron, no, I'm not going to ask you to defend that. Who could, right? But here's what I did. On my very first show, with my very first guest almost 2 years ago, the question I asked is, what is conservatism? And how is it related to what conservatism might have been defined as, say, 30 years ago? And I feel like 2 years later, I still don't have a very good answer to that. Because when I see that, you know, babies with guns shooting out of the womb, that doesn't strike me as conservative.
I'm not going to insult somebody personally. I'm going to keep Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment not to speak ill of a fellow Republican.
Oh, a fellow Republican.
However, that guy has no business being in elected office with those sort of comments. I think John Cornyn is a great senator. I think he's a great leader for us. He's done a lot of things. I think what a conservative is someone who wants to have a small and limited government. We stick to the enumerated powers of the Constitution. We have a strong national defense, and we protect our homeland. A lot of these social issues that these guys are going off on, I respect their opinion, but it's not about governing, in my view.
It's not about governing. It's about making sure government doesn't work at all. It's about all the filibustering, stalling, making sure that bill never becomes law. I mean, that's the problem. Cornyn is in leadership, and as someone in leadership, he has to make some kind of compromise to make sure things happen. And that's the problem that Stockman has with him, that he works, tries to, you know, maybe build consensus and doesn't take a purely ideological route. And that is grounds for dismissal. Well, if you don't want to govern, get out of government.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Can we really say that the person who ranked second most conservative and is the Senate Minority Whip, so like you said, in leadership, we say that he's a compromiser at that point? Even in 2008, he was ranked 17th.
Well, compared to Stockman.
Sure.
The
other part of this is that I think we forget historically is that party infighting has galvanized and energized the GOP.
Yeah.
And it's done that for a long time. I mean, if you look at Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative, when that was published in 1960, it opens, and it doesn't open by attacking liberals. It attacks establishment Republicans, right? It attacks establishment Republicans, and then Reagan, who's a Goldwater follower, right, makes his name by, you know, attacking the Republican establishment. He challenges Ford in '76, and then you know, Newt Gingrich is the contract with America. So there's been a long history of attacking, you know, sort of the man, but I think they've reached the kind of cultural revolution end of the story where you just have so many purges and you eat your own. Like, I wonder if we're at the end of that.
This story is not one I've thought about before, and this is fabulously interesting to me. So if we look at the map of Senate primary challenges right now, almost all of those primary challenges are coming towards Republicans. You see right there that basically everyone who is facing a primary challenge currently has a Republican incumbent. Wyoming is probably the big one folks are looking at mostly because of Liz Cheney, not because she's actually doing particularly well. Enzi is beating her pretty well in the polls. But when Democrats infight, it typically hasn't strengthened the party. So why is it? Why would it strengthen the party for Republicans but not for Democrats?
Well, what's interesting is that we disempower our left and they empower their right. And so I think that is part of the story. But I think there's something just very interesting about the way that and I think also, you know, Democrats participate in this because we tell this magical story of their use. Remember when there were those really great establishment? Remember when the Republican Party was, you know, just really straightforward, knew how to govern and compromise? That party has been fighting with itself for 50 years. So that story, I mean, but once you're in office, of course, you have to make deals, you have to govern. And so the lesson that all insurgents learn is they have to govern, right? But I do think that, you know, I think there's the stories are not parallel with these two parties, and we tend to try to make equivalences, and they're not.
It's also very interesting, this idea that you have to learn to govern once you get in, because that's part of what the Tea Party has demonstrated. They're not going to be willing to learn this time. They don't want to govern.
Politics. And I was just thinking, to me, in 2010, the Republican infighting took a particularly dangerous tone because it wasn't just about infighting anymore. It was about taking our country back with the resurrection of the Tea Party, and it was very, very racial, whether any of them will admit it or not.
Racial, absolutely. I will not sit here and allow you to say that. The Tea Party came in. There were 63 people who came in 2010 because the government grew too much because I will not allow people to sit here and say there's a racial aspect to it. That is absolutely
so this is absolutely valuable, and I'm not going to let it die over the course of the commercial. I want to come back and ask the question about voters. So I think this is relevant, and I think the fact that you feel that much passion about it means we should talk about it. So when we come back, we're going to ask that question.